Good morning, Periscope. How are you? I pray you are having an amazing morning. Just wanted to jump on my ride in this morning and just kind of encourage you. For those who don't know me, who's never been on my scope, my name is Latoya L. Wallace. I am the author of The Dark Side That Birthed My Worship. I am one who has vitiligo, which is a skin condition that allows the pigment in your skin to be destroyed, and ultimately you have white patches, or you have no pigment or coloration at all. So I wrote a book that shares the encounters that I experienced. I had vitiligo since I was 12 years old. And so in there I share different encounters and different experience of the mental battle and the mental torment that I face in the darkness, in the dark side, growing up as a young preteen into my teenage years on into my young adult years. I talk about different situations. I talk about different circumstances. I talk about how, there were times where I attempted to commit suicide. There were times I battled with rejection, isolation, abandonment. I battled with just the question of why me. I battled with why was I the one that had to deal with vitiligo and had to go through this. So in my book, it's called The Dark Side That Birthed My Worship. Welcome. Thanks for tapping in. Thanks for joining. I talk about that. I talk about the mental instability. I talk about how the enemy had my mind to believe that I had no purpose. I had no desire to even live because my skin, my outer appearance was changing. It was abnormal from what the normal little girl should look like. I was born just as chocolate. And now at the age that I am, my pigment has completely changed. And so I talk about that in the book. I talk about, there's a chapter in my book where I talk about the makeup, when I talk about where I tried to cover it up. And when I tried to cover it up, I felt more embarrassed, more ashamed, and more violated than I did with not covering up. But yet, mentally, I wanted to be covered up. I wanted to be back normal. So I talk about that in my book. I talk about there was an experience that I had in my book where I was in 8th grade, where I went to a dance. And in that dance, at the dance, I wore the cream, I wore the makeup because I wanted to cover it up. I wanted to enjoy the dance. I wanted to have a normal time just like any other little girl, without the stares, without the disgusting look from the people, without the kids acting like I'm infecting them or I'm bothering them. And, there was an instance that happened at the dance where it caused so much mental torment to where I ultimately went home and I tried to end my life. I tried to, end my life. So I talk about that in the book. I talk about, I had my daughter when I was a young teenager. Not young, but I talk about how I had my daughter because I wanted to be loved. I wanted someone to love me. I wanted to feel loved. And so I talk about how, I got pregnant when I was 18 years old. And I talk about how the person who I got pregnant by, how they completely abandoned me, completely rejected me. And it was just me and my daughter. So all these different personal things I talk about in my book. But the thing that I share as a testimony in my book is how even in those darkest times, in those darkest moments, God found me. God found me during the time I was crying out. I was pouring out. I didn't want to live. I didn't want this. I wanted to know why. I was angry. I was blaming God. I isolated myself. I separated myself from people. Even though I was around those that supported me, I was around family, I was around friends, the inward me was slowly dying. The inward me was slowly wanting to not be here anymore. And so I talk about that. I talk about those different things. I talk about those encounters. I talk about, those situations. But I ultimately talk about how I encountered God. How in that I was baptized through the Holy Spirit. How in those times through the night where God was still whispering, God was still there. He was showing me, it got to a place where I encountered God. I had an encounter with God like no other. I began to speak in an unknown tongue. I never asked for any of that. But during those times of me pouring out, during those times of me crying out with my heart, I encountered God. And ultimately and slowly it built my relationship with him. So in the darkness, God will find you. In darkness, God will pull you to the light. In dark, there is still light. In darkness, there is still light, because God is light. And during this time, I talk about in my book how he slowly pulled me from that place. He slowly took me from the place of the mental torment that the enemy had me in to the stability in him, of knowing who I am in him, believing who I am in him, walking in who he says I am in him, and beginning to walk that out, beginning to live that, beginning to allow his word to become a part of me, to where ultimately I went from that place of living in darkness to total freedom. I went from that place from accepting who I am and accepting who he has made me to be, even though I'm the only unique person in my entire family that has vitiligo, even though I'm the only unique person that had to deal with it growing up as a teenager, growing up, the only person in my high school that had vitiligo, going to different places. My first job, I talk about being bullied in high school. I talked about how I was being so tormented in high school that I used to avoid going down certain hallways, avoid going to certain classrooms, because I didn't want to be tormented. I was called Spots. I was called Raccoon. Oh my God, all these different things are in the book. So the book is called The Dark Side That Birthed My Worship. And again, it talks about how in the darkness, God birthed who I am today. God birthed my identity. God birthed my uniqueness. And God birthed and broke me free from the bondage of isolation, the bondage of rejection, the bondage of abandonment, the bondage of depression, suicidal thoughts. All of these different things, these different spirits that the enemy tried to bind me with, had tried to have me bound in. God pulled me from those places. So it's a book of encouragement. It's a book of inspiration, inspiring someone, those who are going to different dark places, those who have those moments where they feel like they stuck and they just can't get out, or they don't know how to get out. Stay in the place where you get to the place where it becomes an altar for you. The darkness for me became my altar, to where I ended up building my relationship in God through prayer, through crying out, through supplications, through pouring out to him my heart and my desire to him. And ultimately that became my altar. Ultimately that became the place where God built me up, where God built my courage up, built my boldness up, built everything up of who I am in him, build it up in the darkness. So again, I am the author of The Dark Side That Birthed My Worship. I am one who has vitiligo. I've had it since I was 12 years old. It's a condition that has no cure. It's a condition that so many people will go through very extreme measures to try not to allow the progress to take over, which ultimately is your pigment is destroyed. You lose your pigment. And so there are so many out here that are going through mental instability and going to extremes, trying to reverse something that is incurable, instead of accepting who God has called them to be, instead of accepting uniqueness that he has made them to be. So many people, they isolate themselves. I know people who I speak with that do not come out of their home. They feel they isolate themselves in their home. They won't go out. They won't uncover themselves. They cover their entire areas where they have these patches. I know people who go through these extreme treatments where they have radiation, where they take all these different type of medication to be able to try to slow down the progress or try to reverse it, when it's actually no cure for it. Instead of accepting it, instead of walking in it, and instead of believing and knowing that they have purpose and plan in it. Because when God made them and God made this condition to hit their body, it was for a purpose and for a reason. So it's so many people who are silently battling mentally torment of this condition. And so this book serves as a platform. It serves as a voice. It serves as a place, a read where someone can go, a testimony where someone who's just like them, who has vitiligo, who has to deal with the mental torment. I was almost raped because there was a guy that wanted to find out my, genital parts or my private parts, wanted to see what color they was. So they violated me. I was violated. I was left into an abandoned building. I share this in my book of how I was left there to die because a person wanted to see something about me, and instead of accepting me who I am or just showing me who I am or just loving me for me, they manipulated me and they tried to use me and they tried to violate my body in a way that caused me to almost not want to be here. So I am one who has vitiligo. I speak for the voices, for those that are silent. I share my testimony. I share how, even as parents who have children with vitiligo, they don't understand it. So they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to get help or how to get support systems for them, because even as a child, the biggest thing is to not to be stared at, to want to be seen as normal as any other child. But when you have other children who don't know and they stare and they ask these questions, or they bully them, or they feel like they disgusting to them, or they don't want to be around them, those things hurt. And if you don't have the right parents, or if parents don't understand or know how to deal with a child that's dealing with vitiligo, then that leaves the child even more isolated, feel more rejected, feel more unloved, right? It's just so much. It's just so much. So I encourage you to get the book. I encourage you, to even go on my website. Thank you. I can see your name, but thank you so much. But I encourage you to go to my website. Look at my website. There's more about who I am. There's more about, the things that I've overcame dealing with vitiligo. And then, like I said, more about the book and go into more details. Again, the title is The Dark Side That Birthed My Worship. My website is www.latoyalwallace.com. And this is an untold. I've never spoken about it. I've never been a voice for the community of vitiligo. I've never said anything. I silently, how sometimes you think you overcome something, or you think you have dealt with something until you have to face it again. So for over 30 years, I've never said anything in regards to me and vitiligo. I never talked about it. I used to divert the attention off me by making jokes, by being a clown in high school and different things like that, to divert the attention off what's wrong with you, why you look like that, where them spots come from, why you got spots on your face, all those different things. So I've never talked about it in over 30 years. God led me to actually share my story. And I saw a little girl who was 16 years old working in a grocery store. Her head was down. She didn't want to be seen. She was really, standoffish. And she had vitiligo. And she led me to encourage her. And that's what inspired me to write. That's what inspired me to talk about it. That's what inspired me to share my testimony, to share it to someone else, to let them know that they can overcome it. And that's my darkness. My darkness is vitiligo. But it can be, whatever type of darkness that someone is dealing with. We all deal with different things, and we let the cares of this world cause us to mentally go through these instabilities and have the enemy having our mind in such a place of torment. But God is the one that can pull us from that place and break us free when we begin to seek him, or when we begin in that place of crying out to where we can call on him and he will find us. He said he will never leave us nor forsake us. He is always with us. And even when we don't think he's there, right? So I didn't even have no intentions of getting on saying all of that, but hey. So be encouraged on today. Allow your testimony to be made known. Share your story. Talk about how God has pulled you through. Talk about how God has overcome. What we think is so minute and so insignificant is so big to God, and it's so big to someone else. We never know what another person is going through. We never know what another person is mentally battling. Like I said, for me, I always had a smile on my face. I always had support around me. My friends, my family was there for me, but I smiled. But there's encounters that I share in my book that no one has never known about. My parents don't even know about the different things that I share in my book. They don't even know the different things that I encountered growing up. They never knew because I never spoke about it. And so I believe it's just a time in the season where God is causing those miracle signs and wonders to be made known in the ones who are miracles, who are signs and who are wonders, but through their voice, through them sharing their story and their testimony. So on today, even on today, I just encourage you to share your story, encourage someone, inspire someone, enlighten someone, you know, and let them know. Even share this out, even on your Periscope, with your Periscope family. This can share, you know, encourage somebody else. If anything, encourage somebody else to let them know that God can, you can be set free. You can be set free. You can be liberated. You don't have to stay in that place of depression. You don't have to stay in that place of resentment. You don't have to stay in that place of, you know, bitterness. All these different things that can eat away at our minds like cancer. We don't have to stay there because God is our deliverer. He's our savior. He is the one who can pull us out. He is the light in dark places. So I pray that you have an amazing day. Tune in the next time. I get on every so often. I try to be more consistent, but with everything that's going on, yeah, kind of can't do that. So I try to get on as much as I can, but I pray again that this encourage you. I pray that this inspire you. Go ahead again, and like I said, check out my website. There's more about me. There's more about who I am. I am also on Facebook too. I do live videos there, and I kind of share my story and different contents, and just kind of encourage people as well. So you can follow me on Facebook, Latoya L. Wallace. I am on all social media platforms. L. Wallace _ is her name. Even on Instagram. So yeah. So thanks for tapping in. I truly appreciate it. And I will also follow you as well. And just enjoy the rest of your day. This is an amazing day God has given us. Brand new grace, brand new mercy. If nothing else, He has allowed us another day to see. Asking you to continue to pray for the Bahamas, those that has been affected by the hurricane, you know, that catastrophe. We're praying for them. We're interceding for them, believing and knowing that God is just going to, you know, move and send the help and send the support and the things that are needed, you know, for those that have been affected by that. So we're lifting them up in prayer as well. And until next time, bye.